The Gospel from John. Sometimes after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Year B, 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. The theme of today's Gospel is God who fed His people, as in previous liturgy and the prophecy of the Good Shepherd who would come to punish irresponsible shepherds and reward the good one. Jesus emphasizes the realization of this prophecy. "I raise up a shepherd who grazed my flock. It will live in peace and in justice." Jesus intervenes in time of the need. The catechesis of Jesus will stretch out and have arrived at the time to dedicate to the stomach during his preaching. And Jesus understands the precarious nature of his people who were hungry and ordered his disciples to provide for food to eat for them. But the disciples underlined the fact that 200 dinars would not be enough money to meet the needs of the people. But it was only a trial, and God actually took steps then through the miracles of the multiplication of the bread, fish. The miracles happened. There are important steps to be emphasized here. First, give yourself to eat. It's a trial and an order. It means that man must provide food for the hungry, at least a little, but shared, and the little shared with the heart can multiply. Second, money is not even enough to feed for so many people, is also important but not necessary, because at the end it did not even satisfy even a bite. God who gives the bread and disciples shall eat, there is a boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. They said those were enough for Jesus. 5 plus 2 equals 7. It is the perfect number, the number of God, attributable mainly to a symbol of 7, as the 7 sacraments, the 7 holy gifts of the Holy Spirit, the 7 days of creation, the 7th day of rest, the Sabbath, and so many numbers 7 in the Bible. Other number 7 as the cup of judgment in the book of Revelation, etc. Third, Jesus took the loaves and fish, gave thanks, and distributed to those who are sitting. The miracle of multiplication occurred thanks to the hand of Jesus that received the gift of a boy, though little, precarious or small. It doesn't matter. Thank for the little, and it was distributed to the same time to all. Can you still remember the episode of the generous widow of Sarepta during the time of the prophet Elijah? The flour with a little oil, it is not exhausted. The first reading, the prophet Elisha welcomes the gifts of the benefactor, order him to feed people too. And this happened, the miracle of God, even though he was not inclined to give, because it was never enough. But for God's intervention, through the prophet's miracle, has done everything. The miracle has done the same. Where God is, there will no end for anything. Fourth, let them see. The sign sitting down is the symbol of comfort and relaxation. Sit down to stay, like staying at the banquet table. Get in touch with the earth, with creatures, with the nature. There was a lot of grass. Where there is direct contact with the land, with the world, the food does not end, and even more would be multiplied through the power of sharing and giving. If men would have the conscience to share the earth's resources with no exploitation, as the encyclical of Pope Francis, Laudato Si, stressed, the miracle of the multiplication for the poor would be necessary and also abounds. The generous offer of man is a sign of the divine providence. If people begin to refuse by sharing, there would be a total hunger in the whole universe. It would be the cosmic explosion and disharmony of creation. Sharing is compared to a tree that never fails to provide and bear fruit for man's benefit. Thus, there is still in the world the harmony of nature. Between the cosmos and the man exists a mutual and peaceful rapport. Fifth, pick up the piece left over. First, the argument that it was not enough, even 200 dinars, emphasized the disciples. So many loaves were not enough, even enough, however little it was, but enough to the whole people. Indeed, has multiplied. Not by virtue of the number or amount depends on everything, but by the power of God. As Jesus said, if you believe, you will see. Although it all depends on readiness of the boy to hand over everything to Jesus, what he had, that through sharing of some generous hands, the multiplication of bread was occurred. Remembering an employer, if there is work, there is life. If there is life, there is sharing. If there is no sharing, no multiplication of bread. If there is multiplication, there is grace in abundance. In Jesus, nothing is impossible, as turning water into wine, multiplying the little bread, feed the people of the little bread, and it is even more advanced at the real manifestation of his divinity. Jesus is the bread which came down from heaven, that first of all it has multiplied itself. The bread, panem super substantialem, the bread according to the Vulgate translation in the Lord's Prayer, referring precisely to the Eucharist. In fact, it approached the Passover of the Jews. In the connection with this, there is a liturgical act behind this gesture made by Jesus. So we are at the time of the memory of the immolation of the Lamb and remembers the Word of God. What God has done to his people Israel, all the wonders that has raised among them, as the passage in the Red Sea, seeing the outstretched hand of God that fights Pharaoh in favor of the people. It was a prodigy, the unforgettable for Israel to remember during the Israelites' Easter time. Jesus performed a liturgical act, offers himself on the cross. The break of bread itself break the bread himself in the Eucharist, shares his church, sitting in the assembly, feeds on the food in his abundance, will become for us the bread most desired by all and by the angels, his body and blood in the Eucharist. The gestures of the miracle connotes true liturgical celebration and also the anticipation and implementation of the celebration of the Eucharist in our times. However, the consecrated host can't feed the level of satisfaction of the flesh, but it feeds plentifully itself, the soul, while the power sharing of a bread as a gift really feeds the stomach, and it is still looking for more. And God provides more and more. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. God has already done a miracle every day. The bread is enough. Just look at the creation to note the endless graces that exist to the nature. And pretending to feed the soul, just review the act of redemption as a total giving of Christ's body and blood. In the sanctification, just watching the Holy Spirit that provides the taste, flavor, wisdom, kindness, etc. Without the Holy Spirit that can stimulate the palate, even the finest bread there is in the world would never be tasty. It would seem to its hand no taste, salty or sweet in it. Eating bread and feels the taste is a real gift of God. Everything comes from the divine fiat that arises creation, thanks to the divine will that steers the taste in the universe. Thus enjoying the food, the taste function very well, and also must remember the 9 fruits of the Holy Spirit, the 7 gifts and virtues of God. All stimuli are engraved in man's life. Those listed fruits and gifts of the Holy Spirit are the ingredients for life, seen towing the taste of the bread, and becomes bread of discord, disunity, division, malignancy, as it says in the second reading, that the true bread of the Trinity creates community, unifies the faithful, creates harmony and beauty in the soul. We know that not by bread alone does man live, but also for the Word of God. And at the end of this, And at the end of this union, not communion with the people, creates this harmony. But if you receive the fruit of the Holy Spirit, you create community harmony, and you feel the beauty of it in the soul. Jesus then will say later, "Look for bread that does not perish," and wanted to bring his people toward the search of the bread that comes down from heaven, which is his friendship. This is bread given to us, not the bread that men fought for interest and kill for sake of money, for land, for food, etc. The bread of God meets and creates harmony in life. Without this real food, man is nothing, nothing and nothing. And if nothing, God is always everything. Happy Sunday for you.